Next, we're going to talk about caregiving in general, and we have put together a panel discussion for our guest today. Lauren is going to moderate it, and with us this afternoon we have Mary Jo Carlson and Alyssa Lewin. And so I am going to have everyone start your cameras. And Lauren, I am going to give the floor over to you, and please feel free to begin your talk.
Sounds great. Thank you, Nicole. So hi, everyone, again. Thank you so much for joining us for this panel discussion. I'm Lauren, a mental health therapist, advocate, and women living with muscular dystrophy myself. I'm really honored to be working with MDA today. And I really want to thank our panelists for being here today. We are so delighted to have you, and we really appreciate your time and your willingness today to be part of this discussion, especially because we know that caregivers are often so busy managing multiple responsibilities and demands. We really value your time, and we're excited to have this discussion. So I would love to start by having our panelists introduce themselves with your name, what type of caregiver you are or have been in the past, and generally what your role is in regard to caregiver burnout, caregiving responsibilities, and just some of your general info about you. And then we'll move into some questions. So Alyssa, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you so much, Lauren. I appreciate your inviting me here and the chance to talk with everybody. Thank you. So I refer to myself as a serial caregiver. It started 20-something years ago. We won't discuss how long ago, when I realized that my then 7-year-old son had some pretty significant learning challenges and helping him. But then taking care of various elderly parents, my brother who had a severe health incident, and it's just one after another. Life happens, right? And what that has meant for me is in my learning about the impacts on me of being a caregiver, and we'll probably get into that more later, how much support is needed and how little is often available for that hands-on support, that real meaty contact. And that's why I created Nancy's House, which provides a variety of kinds of supports for family caregivers, from workshops to support groups to retreats.
Wonderful, thank you. And Mary Jo, we'd love to hear from you. Oh, it looks like you're on mute. We should just unmute yourself.
I was being good, so I wouldn't make any noise. I'll start over. My name is Mary Jo Carlson. I live here in the state of Maryland, and my husband has ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. I have been his caregiver now for 13 years. ALS is a progressive disease, one of the many neurological diseases that fall under MDA. And starting out, he didn't need much care, but now I'm at the point where I do all the driving. I help him get dressed. He doesn't walk. I prepare all the meals. I do all the grocery shopping. I take care of everything. So I've become a very strong woman. I feel that as a caregiver, you didn't think you could do all these things, but when it happens, you step up to the plate and you do. And for me, you know, the daily routine is, he's got some independence, but I have to do a lot for him. So I'm pretty much always here. I think for me, it's been hard. And again, we're going to get into those topics later, but it's hard to find time for yourself. I think sometimes you lose yourself in your caregiving duties. And I know, like I said, you got other questions coming up, but for other caregivers out there, you're going to get tired and you're going to get irritable and you think you can't do it, but take those breaks, get a massage, ask neighbors, always ask if what they can do. And I always say, I got it, just like you mentioned earlier. So yeah, it's a tough job, but I've been married to him for 50 years. So it's what I do. And as far as support groups, there are support groups out there. I've attended a few myself, which we can talk about later. And my husband is retired military platoon leader, Vietnam, 1969. And the VA has a lot of support. So maybe individuals might want to know about that if they're connected to the military.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's great to know. So I think that there are so many different ways that we could go in this discussion. And to start out, I would love to hear your thoughts on what you feel is the hardest part about balancing the needs of your care recipient with the needs of your own. Like, what makes that so difficult? What are some of those biggest reasons? Is it a lack of time? Is it guilt? Is it lack of wanting to ask for help? What would you say in your own experience have you noticed has been the biggest or the hardest barriers for you in maintaining your wellness?
Mary Jo, do you want to go first or should I jump in?
I can go first. For me, we were both very independent, and he was a runner. He had his activities he did, and I'm very social, and I exercised and I did things, and yeah, it changes your schedule completely. What I find, and it happened today, I got up and I had my to-do list that I was going to get these things done, but things come up and I don't get my things done, and then I get a little irritable, I get exhausted, and I get overwhelmed. Those are my three words. My three big words for caregiving is you're not alone if you feel overwhelmed, if you feel exhausted, and you get irritable, because it's expected, because you have a very difficult time finding time for yourself. You really do. And you have to. You have to find time for yourself. Get help,
Yeah.
And there's ways that we can get into that, little things that I do just to relieve some stress and just get away from it for a little while.
Sure. Yeah, and I'd love to hear those things. Alyssa, do you want to share first about some of your biggest reasons?
So I think that list you created of what are the barriers to self-care is a really good comprehensive list, and one where I think each one of us can go down and say, okay, here's what this means in my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think there are some other pieces too. One is the confusion between self-care and selfish, and that people often think one is the other, and self-care is not in any way selfish. I know you addressed that in the presentation you did just before, but to recognize how important that self-care is for your own well-being and for that of the people around you. So that's one piece. I think it's also easier to see somebody else's needs than to see our own. Especially as women, we are socialized and conditioned to pay attention to others and take care of others, and it makes it that's in front of our eyes. That's what we can see. And so it makes it easy to pay attention to what we're not seeing. So I think that's another major barrier.
Absolutely. I think that's great. And I love that you spoke about self-care and selfishness, because I can say it, but I'm not a caregiver. You're a caregiver. And that is so much more authentic coming from you, especially someone that leads Nancy's House, that has founded all of these great resources for caregivers, because you have probably interacted with more numbers of caregivers than certainly any of us here. So that is really great. I would love to know, Mary Jo, what were some of the biggest things that helped you? You said that there were a number of things that you have committed yourself to try to combat feelings of irritability and burnout, and things that you do for yourself that help. And for both of you, maybe we'll start with Mary Jo and then Alyssa. What are some of those things that have been good for you?
Well, for me, like I said, my husband and I have been married for 50 years as of June of this year. And so I can't imagine, and he can't imagine, anybody else taking care of him. I have had a son that lives nearby, has helped out. I was able to take a vacation. Now we've been in COVID, so I haven't been on an airplane, but I did fly home to Washington State to see cousins and college girlfriends, and I was gone for 10 days. And my son came in and great bonding time for my adult son and dad. But for me right now, going out to lunch with a girlfriend, having time to chat and laugh. Laughter is the best medicine, and we do it here. And I think that sometimes when I'm making the bed, which I didn't do today, I'll make the bed and cleaning up a little bit. I have one of those little, what are they called, Alexa things?
Yeah.
I said her name. I asked her to play meditation music or spa music. And that goes really well when I take my hit the wall afternoon nap about 2:30. So I will lay on the bed when I feel that I just cannot function. I will lay on the bed, an hour or less power nap with that music playing, and I get a really good nap. Going outside, just go outside, sit outside and get some vitamin D, enjoy the nature. My husband does that in his wheelchair. It's good. We were getting massages occasionally, but then COVID hit and the senior center classes stopped and massages stopped, everything stopped. So we're trying to get back into a little bit more activity now. But something as simple as calling a friend, sitting out front. We have 9 o'clock coffee with Fred on the front porch. A few neighbors come over. It's social. Social life is important for the caregiver as well as the person you're taking care of. You have to socialize, and we just do coffee with Fred on the front porch at 9 o'clock, and when it's not bad weather. But yeah, you have to find time for yourself, and it can be something as simple as sitting and listening to music. Go in a different room, listen to music for 10 minutes, just something to clear your head. But like I said, you can become very overwhelmed, and you got to know when that happens. And I need a nap, I have to lay down. But there's so many: music, exercise, talk to a friend, take a 5-minute walk, enjoy nature. Yeah, all those things.
Yeah, those are great. Those are really good ideas. Definitely can understand how those could be helpful. What about for you, Alyssa?
I think Mary Jo just gave a really comprehensive list. That was really
Yeah,
great.
she did.
Yeah. Massage for me was always a major relief. Part because it gets rid of the tension that's in your body, and that's wonderful, but part also because this is somebody else really literally taking care of you. And as caregivers, when we pour out so much, to have some of that coming back in is really wonderful. Walking the dogs too. I love, having that. It's like, sorry, got to take the dogs out,
Yeah, absolutely. I love your point about kind of getting pampered, someone taking care of you. And so that makes me think also like massage is amazing, especially for your body. But like, if that's not your thing, if you don't like that, getting your nails done maybe is your thing, or, just getting your hair done, like getting your hair washed at the salon feels so good. So maybe you just want to go and get your hair styled once a month or something like that. Just something that makes you feel like you are receiving care from some type of service, I think is really good to remind yourself that you're a human too, and your needs matter, which is really important.
Right. Absolutely.
So just sort of talking about these relationships with family members, it seems like, well, it would make sense for caregivers to have better relationships with their care recipients when the caregivers are taking care of themselves to avoid that burnout. Have you noticed any fluctuations in your relationship with your care recipients when you have or have not addressed your needs? And how does that ability to maintain your wellness impact that relationship? And especially with family members, it might be interesting to talk about how the relationship is affected as a family member / caregiver. Like when you're taking care of yourself, how does that impact the relationship, especially from a family member perspective?
So I'm not a very nice person when I'm tired. And
Understandable.
yeah, it's part of that being human thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to find those ways to get enough sleep or to just get that break when I need it was so critically important. There was an article written by Barry Jacobs. He's a psychologist who currently is writing for AARP, and he wrote an article for them about caregiver bullying, especially if somebody is depending on you physically and you have to move them. When you're tired, when you're irritable, you can be a little rougher than you intend to be.
Sure.
And so taking care of you becomes so critically important in keeping your own health, wellness, patience, tolerance, all of that, in check, keeping you in your best place. So
Absolutely. I think sometimes caregivers, it may not even be conscious that they're acting in irritable ways, or like they may be a little rougher with care or have shorter remarks, and maybe it's not even intentional. It's not that they're intentionally, being a little short with their words or being a little rougher. It's certainly not intentional, but rather it's a byproduct of I'm tired, I'm burned out, I haven't slept well last night. It's human nature to respond in a more irritable way when you are running on empty. So I think that would definitely cause tension between the caregiver and the individual receiving care, because for the individual receiving care, if they're not aware of this, it could be confusing. They could feel like, oh, are you mad at me? Like, what's wrong with you? Why are you acting this way toward me? Did I do something? And I could just see that very quickly happening in an argument sort of way, just getting short with each other and then feeling like, that the caregiver doesn't want to be there, and just but really, it's not that they don't want to help. It's just that they are burned out and they need a break in order to restore their sense of a compassionate caregiver. So that makes sense. What about you, Mary Jo? Any thoughts on this?
You both have summed it up. I mean, my key word, when I mentioned before, overwhelmed, exhausted, and then irritable. And when I'm tired, I get irritable. And yes, I get short with my words. And my spouse might say, could you help me with these compression stockings and get my slippers on? I want to go take Marley, the service dog, for a walk. And I'll go, yeah, just a minute. I'm in the middle of brushing my teeth and I get kind of, And
we are human.
Yeah, and we are human. And I'm not 20 years old anymore either. So your energy level goes down as you get older. And so being married to him for 50 years, of course, I would do anything for him, like he would do anything for me. But for me, that's why I have to take that nap. I call it the wall. I hit a wall between 2 and 3 o'clock every day. Now, I'm a teacher. I used to think it was my teacher nap, but no, I'm just exhausted from care.
Of course.
And I think what makes me irritable also is I have a list of what I was going to accomplish today. And my items go on that other pile because I had to take care of some other things this morning. And then my pile goes off to the left and I'm working on the pile on the right. And so then those things start to build on you and that makes you more overwhelmed. So I do get short. And my nap, I take an hour nap and I wake up and I'm a new person. So most caregivers probably don't sleep well at night. You have interruptions during the night, depending on who you're taking care of and what their needs are. If they wake you at 2 o'clock in the morning because they have to go to the bathroom and you have to assist them, then broken up sleep adds to your tiredness, exhaustion, irritability.
Of course.
Yeah. So what you said about all of the above, a massage occasionally, a manicure, a pedicure, just getting your hair done. I mean, when I'm at a salon and they're shampooing my hair, it's like, oh, this is so wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah, and even as a caregiver, in order to take your own shower and wash your own hair, sometimes you got to get up earlier or stay up later. So those are things. Another thing, as a woman, I put my same work clothes on every day, especially when we've been in COVID and we go nowhere. I put my same work clothes on every day, and And we went out to dinner. Yesterday was our birthday, my husband's and mine.
Oh,
We went out to dinner, and it was just so nice to like fix my hair and put a nice top on and feel like you were dressed up a little bit. We weren't really dressed up, but
that's
just to have
wonderful.
a date night, and that depends on, I'm a caregiver for a spouse, but a date night or something to look forward to. We are very involved in a lot of things to do with his disease, ALS. We would be happy to talk to anybody. That's just who we are. My husband's very positive, so I am very fortunate. He's more positive than I get tired. But he's a very positive person. He gets a little short sometimes, but very positive. So, yeah, just keep doing those things for yourself, as minor and tiny as they might be.
Wonderful. Yeah, those are great tips. I think that makes so much sense. And just listening to you both, I'm just really grateful for your honesty. I think it takes a lot of courage to come on to a panel with an audience and to be able to admit and talk about, like, yeah, I get a little short, I get a little irritable. And I'm just really honored and grateful that you are open with talking about that, because I know for a lot of caregivers it's a hard subject to discuss with other people, especially neighbors, friends, extended relatives that are not caregivers and don't really understand this. So it becomes very private sometimes to deal with these things, and I'm just really glad that you are both bringing up a lot of these great points. Go ahead.
You just triggered something, and that is something that I have a tendency to say, oh, no, it's okay. I can do it.
Sure.
And I don't delegate well, and I'm getting better at that. But I do feel, and I think a lot of caregivers probably feel the same way. I feel like you really don't understand what's going on. You don't understand.
Yeah.
I can't get dressed in the morning. I have to get him dressed first. You don't understand that he can't put his pants or put his socks on, and you really don't understand. They understand that you're a caregiver and you need help, but they really don't live in your shoes.
No.
But as people that are listening in, we're all caregivers, and we do understand each other.
Right.
Maybe not specifics, but we do understand a lot of we have a lot of commonalities here of what we're going through.
Yeah, that's why support for caregivers is so important. I know Alyssa is going to talk about some resources probably later as we wrap up and share resources at the end, because they are out there, they do exist. And if you have ever felt kind of alone and isolated, don't let that continue to make you feel alone and isolated, because there are support groups and resources and more events like this, and you just have to find them, and we'll share those with you. So that is good. I do have some more questions, but we also are getting questions in the queue for questions from the audience, and so I wanted to address these also. So on the subject of, you're a caregiver for your loved ones or care recipients in any capacity physically in a lot of ways, but what about emotionally? If your individual that you are providing care for is going through a really hard time, maybe with depression, someone is writing in the chat or in the question queue about a situation where someone is kind of alone in their own social system. They maybe have some anger about their limitations, their physical disability, and feeling angry about social society barriers and just circumstances. So as a parent in this case, or as a caregiver for anyone for this, how would the caregiver help that individual without also kind of compromising the limitations of how much they can help with that? I'm fearing, the caregiver is going to turn into a therapist and just be in that therapist role all day, every day? What about their own boundaries with their own mental health? That's like my clinical hat is like, oh no, I worry about the caregiver just absorbing all of that depression 100% of the time. But on the other hand, if it is like a family member, like in this case, it looks like a father is asking the question of how can I help my son, who is an adult son, who is very much struggling with anger? How can I help my adult son as a caregiver to him, as a support person to him with the son's depression, but also balance that? Like what kind of advice would you have?
I think there are a couple of pieces that are important. I agree with you, Lauren. I would not want to see this father try to take on a therapist role. One of the advantages of being a therapist is you're not immediately emotionally involved, right? And so it gives you a little more distance for having that discussion. But I think to engage a therapist for that adult child is a very useful step. A second piece, well, there are a number of pieces. Also to talk with a physician about would antidepressant medications be an appropriate intervention here. And if there are other ways of managing that. So a therapist, medical intervention. And the third is one of the things that is really helpful in alleviating depression is helping other people. So these situations that this person is so angry about, the physical difficulties in the community or the cultural things, that if there are organizations, advocacy organizations that they can take part in where they can start to become a voice for people who are dealing with whatever this condition is that he has, whatever the limitations are that he has, then I'm assuming a he.
It is a he.
Then that feeling that you are not powerless, feeling that you can make a difference is a tremendous impact on countering depression and anger.
Absolutely. I love what you said about empowerment. No matter who you are, whatever you're going through that is difficult, whether you are going through a divorce or a chronic illness, or you're struggling with homelessness or poverty, whatever circumstances you feel you have that are extraordinarily unfair, they are unfair. They're horribly unfair. But if you can get involved in that community, that population of people that are also going through, divorce or a miscarriage, or struggling with financial situations, or having a chronic illness or ALS or muscular dystrophy, whatever it is that you're going through, connecting with other people going through the same thing is universally proven to help with feelings of empowerment. So for that adult son that was mentioned in this question, I would recommend that, just like Alyssa said, join in with others who have that medical condition, that whatever it is that he has those physical limitations. Connect with other people that are also going through that, and that can provide him with social support. Mary Jo mentioned earlier how great social life is, like that morning coffee that she has with neighbors and people. I think that getting him connected to social support systems would be first and foremost, and then also kind of engaging with a therapist, or at the very least involving a doctor and kind of addressing, okay, this is anger, this is depression, this is concerning, it's affecting quality of life, and it doesn't have to be that way. There are treatments and prevention. Mary Jo, did you have any additional thoughts?
Yeah, the word isolation comes into my mind. We human beings are not meant to be isolated. We are social beings. And during that year of staying home because of COVID, it was tough. And once, things got a little better and we started the outside on the front porch at 9 o'clock, that's something my husband looks forward to. We got wonderful neighbors. They come over and we just tell stupid stories and laugh. And I think that's important, because depression, I think mental illness right now is at a high point because of all this isolation we've been going through, and just a lot of things going on in our world right now. And so listening to the father about his son, my first thought was, just like you both said, a support group, a therapist. Okay. There is nothing wrong with seeing a counselor or a therapist.
Not at all.
Some people have a stigma. If I have to see a counselor or a therapist, there's something wrong with me. Now, I live with a husband that was a platoon leader in Vietnam. He was airborne. He was fought in the war. We just had a reunion at our house with some of the men that he served with 52 years ago in his platoon. And depression within PTSD, that type of thing within that group, they support each other. They tell each other they love them. They're brothers. They have that constant support. When someone gets sick, they are there for them. That's the way my neighbors are. But the man that chatted in with about his son, my first thought, like you said, was therapy, get in a support group. When my husband was first diagnosed, ALS is a 2 to 5 year disease, and he's had it for 13. So he has a very positive attitude. It is what it is. One day at a time, I'm going to live my life. I'm going to beat ALS. It's not going to beat me. He's got that wonderful attitude. But the thing is when we first started this journey with ALS, he didn't want to go to a support group because he didn't want to see others at the progression of the disease and how bad it become. So we didn't go in the beginning. Once we started going, we are now very involved. I've had caregiver meetings at my own home.
Oh, good.
So we've got very involved in it, but that support is important. And the thing is, if the man that's in here with talking about his son, if his son has some kind of something that makes him happy, whether it be baseball cards or I don't know what he's into, but think of what kinds of things make him happy and put a smile on his face. And as simple as it might be, I mean, coloring with him, reading a story together, those are the kind of things that keep your spirits up. And laughter. You've got to have laughter.
Absolutely. Oh, I agree on that for sure. Laughter really can be the best medicine sometimes, when everything else falls short. If we can find a way to laugh at something, that's very, very healing and restorative. We do have another question from the audience as well. It says, with so much on your plate, how do you not lose sight of yourself, your identity? He says, I found an hour to myself last weekend just for him, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do with myself. He says, I don't even know what I want to do anymore, which really ties into the next question that I had as well. Like, my question is, how do you maintain your identity? How do you maintain your sense of self? So what would you both have to say on that?
I think that it's easy to get caught up in this other person's needs. And we have to be reminded, either by friends and family or sometimes the person we're taking care of, that we are a human being as well, that we have to take care of ourselves. We not even take care of, we have to respect who we are. There are things that I enjoy that somebody else might not, that makes me me, right? And to have the time to do that as an expression of who I am, as a fulfillment of who I am, that's going to make me a better person for everybody I come in contact with. But I'm not sure that actually answers the question of how do you do that when you are so tied up in this other person? And that, I think, is tricky, because that's about how do you create those reminders of taking the time for you. Mary Jo was talking about how important it is to have those lunches out with the girlfriend, and having that person who is there for you as you have always been, not just as a caregiver, right? Who knows your deep, dark secrets, who knows the little in-jokes, right? Those are the people who keep us grounded, and those are the people who remind us who we are.
Absolutely. And I think those are fantastic points that we really have to emphasize. I had a thought as well when I'm looking at the question and he's saying, well, I don't even know what I want to do anymore. Well, how would I do that? I would recommend self-discovery, learning who you are again. Because if you've fallen into the trap of, I'm just a caregiver now. I don't even know who I am anymore. I've been doing this for so long. I just haven't had good self-care maintained for a long time. And now I'm at this point where, like you said, I had an hour to myself last weekend and I didn't even know what to do. I think if you find yourself at that point, it's about becoming alive again. And that requires a lot of deep thought and reflection on maybe sitting down to journal, like, what makes me who I am? What do I like? What are 5 things that I like? What are some hobbies that I used to like when I was a kid or when I was a teenager before I became an adult and had all of these responsibilities and started having to work full time and take care of my family and all this stuff? Sometimes we have to go way back. Sometimes we do this even in counseling and therapy when people feel kind of lost. They feel like, I've been working on my college education, or I've been working full time. I've been taking care of my family. I've been, in the role of a caregiver, or I've been doing all of this stuff and going through so much life stress. I don't even know what makes me me anymore. I don't even know how to describe myself. I usually say, okay, let's slow down and let's embrace and honor where we're at and not put a lot of pressure on ourselves to solve this overnight, because your problems did not develop overnight, and we're probably not going to solve this overnight, but that's okay. It's a process. So don't panic, because panicking is not going to help you rediscover who you are. So accept and embrace, okay, we have some work to do. We have some self-discovery to do. We have some thinking to do and experimenting to do. Maybe you think about, I really like to go bowling. I used to do that in the past. Maybe I'll try that again. And you go and try it, and you're like, no, I don't really like this anymore. That's okay. Maybe that's not your thing. Maybe experiment with something else. Maybe you want to start getting into art. Maybe you used to really like to draw. So you get some charcoal and drawing materials and you start doing art. And then maybe that's not your thing either. And that's okay. Don't panic. Don't panic when those aren't your things. Just experiment. Continue to experiment and be open, because when we're open to trial and error, we will find the things that stick. We will find the hobbies and the activities that are like, you know what, that was really fun. I really want to go back and do that again. I want to go fishing again. I never even thought about fishing, but I went and I tried it and I really liked it. So I think it's really about getting creative and open-minded and trying things without the expectation that it might be perfect, because it might not be perfect, but try something. Go to a new restaurant, go to a new cafe that you've never been to before. Try a new hobby, try something that you've never done, a new sport, a new activity, just anything that can help you determine, does this fit with who I am as a person, or does it not? And if it doesn't, that's okay. Just keep rediscovering and relearning about what makes you you. Mary
Lauren,
Jo.
Yeah, you hit a couple things there that was running through my head.
Yeah.
And that is, a lot of times when people ask you, sometimes you'll fill out a form or somebody will say, oh, what are your hobbies? And you go, what hobbies do I have? You kind of do forget what you used to do. In one of my support groups, they had us, it was so much fun. And I did that one night, adult coloring books.
Oh,
And
yes.
I took a meditation class up at our senior center several years ago. And one of the things we did is we did the adult coloring books. You can actually go online and print a page off the internet. You don't have to buy a coloring book. But what it does is it puts you into the moment, and you are so focused on your coloring, you forget everything else around you. And I did that one night. I didn't get very far, but I did a little of that, and I thought, well, that was kind of fun. And I really didn't see my surroundings. I didn't think about anything. I was focusing on the coloring. But another thing is, we live close to the senior center, and I'm old. So, but anybody over 55. And they have great classes. They have creative classes like a basket weaving or an art class, or they have a card group. They put out a jigsaw puzzle, put a puzzle together. That's another time you just kind of bury yourself in the project that you're doing. But places like I don't know if you all have these Joanne Fabrics, they have classes there. You could go there and learn how to crochet or just do some little thing, a little project. But there's plenty of craft places around where you could just go in and do a craft. And it's fun because it puts you into the project in the moment. You kind of forget everything else around you. But it is important to reminisce about, you're in a new stage of your life. That's the most, you got to remember that you've had all these stages, like I'm talking about a spouse right now, but you have different stages of your life, and we're in the older stage now. I'm a caregiver, but we had other times that we were active and we hiked and we biked and we did all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Now we're in a new stage. So what does my husband always say? He says, I forget what his saying is, but he always says, one day at a time, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. Live in the moment. Like in yoga, they tell you live in the moment, live in the present. So make the most of each day. I'm not real good at that. I'm a think ahead kind of person in the future, but he's real good at that. So, but yeah, I think
absolutely
coloring, adult coloring, any little thing you can do. And there's someone coming through in a wheelchair. Okay.
There he is.
Yeah. So you just got to find time for yourself, whether it be a little music, a little coloring. Didn't get very far, but I started to print little letters to my grandchildren, which I don't do. My mother-in-law did to our children. And I thought, I need to do that. Just, you can just set a timer, 15 minutes, you do something for yourself.
That's so sweet.
I don't know what I preach, but it's just the thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a comment just real quick that libraries are also great resources for programs. Alyssa.
I just want to back up. The list of options that you've created is amazing and wonderful. I just want to back up to where this started, which was I had this hour and I didn't even know what to do. And I think we see that as a negative, right? It's like, oh my God, look at this. I can't even figure out. And what I'd like to suggest is, here's an opportunity. You took that moment for self-awareness of looking at, oh, wait, there's something off here. And I think to see this as a positive, as a first step, as kind of an opening a door, rather than what's wrong with me because I can't.
Oh, of course. I think that's a great point. Having an hour and not knowing what to do with it, that's actually totally positive if you frame it in that light. If you say, oh, well, then maybe this is going to be the catalyst to rediscovering who I am. Maybe this is going to be a really powerful moment of self-awareness for me. I think that's a great point, Alyssa. That definitely could be wonderful. And also, it's okay to have some time where we just don't do anything, to just sit and just relax. If we just sit and breathe for a few minutes and allow yourself to be bored for an hour. If you have an hour, it's okay to be okay with being still and not having a lot of stuff on your plate to fill all of your time with. So this has been absolutely wonderful. And we do kind of want to end around 2:45 so that we can give people a little bit of a break before the next event at 3 p.m. So I would love both of you to share any last words of advice and also resources. I know Alyssa has several things that she can talk about with Nancy's house. And Mary Jo, if there's any other resources that you want to share as well, that would be great. And just final words or greatest lessons that you have learned as a caregiver. Anyone can start.
Okay. So lessons that I've learned. One that's mine is exhaustion is real and it has a price. For me, it was developing a form of cancer that I was at no risk of ever developing. But I absolutely attribute it to the stress of caregiving and not taking care of myself, which is why helping other caregivers to take care of themselves is such a personal mission of mine. A second learning actually is from one of our guests, who was a mom who took care of her daughter who had MS. And she came to one of our retreats, not really sure that she even should be there, but a friend insisted, I will take care of your child and you go. And by the end of the retreat, she said what she had learned was that any medical equipment her daughter needed, she would do everything possible she could to not only get that equipment, but to maintain it. And then she took a beat and she said, and what I realized is I am her most important piece of medical equipment.
Oh, I love that.
Right. And I think that's the change that all of us here are looking to create for caregivers, is to recognize you are important in and of yourself.
You're not just equipment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So,
I love that.
in terms of resources, I would certainly like to offer up Nancy's House. Nancy's House breaks the isolation and exhaustion of caregiving. We have a conference that's being done on Zoom, so like this one that's coming up on November 6th, Saturday, November 6th, with 6 dynamite workshops. They're interactive workshops, including one on sleep. It's called You Can't Always Get What You Want. This is Maurice Baynard's 3rd presentation on sleep. His rooms are always packed. He is amazing and funny and wonderful. But that legal and financial information, navigating the special needs network, as complicated as that can be. A Qigong workshop that's breathing and movement. So it's the 6 healing tones of Qigong. People can go on our website. They can see the summaries. It's nancys-house.org. But I would love to see you there. Also, we're on hiatus at the moment, but we do ongoing phone-in support groups. Anybody can call in. You don't have to register. And that information I think can be given, Lauren, through you or through
Yes.
Nicole? Yeah.
Yep. So Nicole, the overall host of today's event, will include your website, Alyssa, Nancy's-house.org, in the post-event email, and I also just dropped the link in the chat box. So either way, people will get it. Yeah.
Okay.
Of course. Mary Jo, do you have any final words or wisdom to share as we wrap up?
Well, I just learned about Nancy's House. I thought that was kind of interesting. May I ask where you are?
So, we're a program, not a place right now. We mainly operate in the greater Philadelphia area, but not always. However, there is a retreat that is coming up in at the end of October into early November that is for people taking care of someone living with ALS. And so we might want to talk about that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna look you up on the internet. For me, I always want to tell other caregivers, remember, you're not alone. You should never feel alone. There is help for you. We are all there to support you. Like I said, I would talk to anyone whose spouse or themselves has ALS, and my husband would talk to them too. We are both very open about the ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. But I would also give you advice of, please reach out for the support. There's groups out there. If you need counseling, whatever you need, reach out, because you're not alone. You need to get that help, or you will, as Alyssa said, you will lose your health. I've personally taken a couple falls and tweaked my knee pretty bad, and I just keep pushing along. And a lot of caregivers push themselves, and they have back problems, and they have, lifting and stuff. There are organizations out there, and I'm of course talking about ALS, but there's other organizations for other diseases. So many neurological diseases out there I know of that fall under MDA. But the support groups are important. But for me, you kind of have to, I got a little too many, like I was consuming myself with too many different ones. Focus on a couple that really help you. I go once a month to the Brigance Brigade Foundation. The one good thing about COVID is we have all these meetings online. So caregivers can do this from home. You don't have to worry about time on the road and everything. And Brigance Brigade Foundation is caregivers group. I love it. And the VA, if anyone's connected to the military, my husband and I'd be happy to talk to you. The VA has caregiver support program in action now. They didn't used to have that, but they have an actual program now that I'm involved in. So anyone that's a military veteran who is having full-time care, a caregiver, a family member, or whoever's taking care of you full-time, there's a program for you there. So just don't, you're not alone. We're out for you.
Thank you so much, Alyssa and Mary Jo. It was really an honor to have both of you here on behalf of MDA and everyone. And I'll turn it back over to Nicole now, but I just wanted to truly thank you for a great conversation. I think a lot of people really enjoyed it. And now back to Nicole.
It was wonderful. Thank you. I found myself sitting here and thinking, oh my gosh, I can totally relate to all those things. And someone wanted to type in, is that your service dog behind you? Yes, that's Marley.
Oh,
and
let me see.
There he is. He's so sweet.
She's a she.
Oh, she, sorry.
Yeah, Fred came in to use the bathroom, and then she hops up on the bed, so there she is.
So sweet. Thank you guys very much. This has been really a valuable conversation. I think all of the folks that were listening had some great comments to say, and I think your personal advice and your personal experiences go a long way with everyone listening today. So thank you so much, and thank you so much, Lauren, for your time.